وافتح علينا بمعرفة العلم وسهل أخلاقنا بالحلم واجعلنا ممن يستمعون القول فيتبعون أحسنه. اللهم اجعل أعمالنا خالصة لوجهك ولا تجعل فيها حظا لغيرك. وصل اللهم على سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. الحمد لله رب العالمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. How's everyone today?
Walaikum salam.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. As you can see today, we have a bit of a hiccup. Not a hiccup, just a span in the works, unexpected nikah. So, it is one that we were informed of, so we're just changing up a bit. When the imam for the nikah comes in, we'll take our break, inshallah. So, because of the uncertainty, I think we're going to start, and I'm not sure, I think this is the first part of our period. We'll just share our hadith for today, and then we'll take our break, come back, do our nahu lesson, and then Quran bi'idhnillah ta'ala, right? We did up until hadith number 17, so we'll do hadith number 18 today bi'idhnillah ta'ala. Right? Just give me a second, maybe I can zoom in a bit. So, عن أبي ذر رضي الله تعالى جندب بن جنادة. عن أبي ذر, the Sahabi رضي الله تعالى عنه is referred to as Abu Dharr. So zoom in a bit more. عن أبي ذر, the Sahabi radiallahu ta'ala anhu, his name is Abu Dharr. It's actually his kunya, but generally gets referred to as Abu Dharr. Everybody knows the Sahabi Abu Dharr, but his name was actually Jundub ibn Junada. Jundub was his name, Ibn Junada. Abu Dharr. I'm not sure what it means exactly. I never really thought about it, but Dharrah will mean like an atom. Dust. A dharrah will be like a speck of dust. One thing about this Sahabi Abu Dharr, radiallahu anhu, he was like a, if you want, like an economic revolutionary. He was like opposed to any form of love of wealth and stuff like that. In fact, some attribute to him, there's an ayah in the Quran that says, وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ مَاذَا يُنْفِقُونَ. They ask you what they must spend. Referring to Rasulullah, the companions ask you what it is that they should spend, meaning what they should give in charity, and what they should spend on others. And in the response to the Quran says, قُلِ الْعَفُوِ. Qul, say to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, al-afu. Al-afu means the excess. That what's left over, or, the excess. And this, what is left over, what is excess, that's up for interpretation. So some would say that, look, you can, you can plan per year, and after you have enough for a year, then you should spend on other people, etc. After your needs are met with it. And some attribute to Abu Dharr that his opinion was that after you have enough for a day, then you must give everything else away. And then tomorrow you start doing. But he was also like such an economic reformist that eventually the Sahaba had to tell him, listen, Abu Dharr, you're a bit too hardcore, you must go stay on the outskirts. That so they actually sent him to stay away a bit on the outskirts of Medina, to stay away from the people. And he passed away there. It's a very pious Sahabi. One was always looking out for, he was like extremely haris. Greedy is not the right word. He was arduously desirous of doing good all the time. No matter how big or small it was, he was always looking for ways to do good. So if you look in the Riyadh al-Salihin or you look in other compilations of hadith, you'll find Abu Dhar is always asking, look here, what's the best thing to do? Tell me about good things to do. He was always seeking out. In fact, in the chapter I'm thinking of in the Riyadh al-Salihin, quite a few, if not all of the hadith in that chapter are narrated by him. Actually, not all of them, but quite a few of the hadith in seeking out good deeds are narrated by Abu Dhar. Just because he was so passionate about finding good things to do. عن أبي ذر جندب بن جنادة رضي الله تعالى عنه وأبي عبد الرحمن معاذ بن جبل رضي الله عنهما. Mu'adh ibn Jabal, also a great Sahabi. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam sent him as a governor to Yemen and to act as a judge there as well, and a mufti. عن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. So here we have a hadith narrated by both of them. Both of them narrate from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And you'll see that by An Abi Dharrin, that's his title, and then his name is Jundub ibn Junadata. I mean, the parts to Arabic name. Firstly, they'll mention the kunya, the patronym, if you want. But it doesn't always indicate lineage. Like Abu Dhar is not indicating lineage. Then his name is Jundub, and he is Ibn Junada, the son of Junada, his lineage. And you can actually refer to them all as so they're all being jar. Abi Dharrin is in jar. Abi, the first part of that is in jar. Jundub is in jar, and Ibni, the first part of Ibni Junada, Ibni is also in jar, because they're all his names. What we call badal. I could have just said Abu Dhar. We could have just said Jundub. We could have just said Ibni Junada. They all refer to the same person. Question? Okay. So this book, number one, is not a primary source of hadith. Right? What I mean by that is it doesn't have the whole sanad in it. It doesn't have the whole chain of narration from the narrator of the book till Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right? The chain here from Imam Nawawi would be fairly long. I mean, if I were to narrate you one of my chains, then there'd be at least like 30-something people in the chain. Obviously, Imam Nawawi was a lot earlier, but still it would be a lot longer than this. Here we just have the Sahih. So there's not a primary work of hadith. But what it does indicate is that when I have, as I was indicating here, An Abi Dhar, and then it says, Wa Abi Abdul Rahman. So it's telling us that there's more than one chain for this hadith, more than one chain of narration. One chain goes through Abu Dhar, and another chain goes through Abu Abdul Rahman or Mu'adh ibn Jabal, as is better known. Right, so yeah, Abu Dhar is usually almost always referred to as Abu Dhar, and Mu'adh ibn Jabal is referred to as Mu'adh ibn Jabal. So it's telling us that there's at least two chains for this at that level. Right, and both of them narrate from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What do they narrate? And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam قال اتق الله حيثما كنت. اتق الله. اتق الله is a فعل الأمر. What's the root letters of it? Taqwa is the root word, but what's the root letters? Wow, qaf, yeah. This is a tricky one. Didn't I mention to last week? Yeah. Wow, qaf, yeah. From wiqaya, shield. Right. But you guys are learning the Mazid fee scales now, isn't it? By which scale are the second years now? Scale number 2. Okay. And the class before that have covered them all, right? At least those 10. So this is on you can just make a note of it. Once you know it, you'll understand it. It's on the 8th scale. Question? Okay, good question. When we have two Sahaba narrating the same thing, does it necessarily mean that they were present at the same time? It doesn't necessarily mean they were present at the same time. So sometimes um, it would usually mean if they're narrating the exact same thing, then it would usually indicate to them being present in the same incident. But it doesn't necessarily mean that. Like it could be advice that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave on multiple occasions, and then the compiler of the hadith book is just saying that, look, both of them narrate the same piece of information. If they're narrating with a meaning, and if they're narrating exactly the same thing, then it could very well mean that it's referring to the same incident. Like we'll have a phenomenon in hadith that sometimes Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you'll have different companions narrating something with almost the exact same meaning but slightly different wordings. Or you will find them narrating sometimes even the exact same thing with different contextual information. Yeah, just indicating to a different scenario. And so from that we learn that it doesn't necessarily mean that they heard it at the same time. Yeah. So Rasulullah says, ittaqi. Ittaqi comes from taqwa, it's a command verb. What does it mean here? Ittaqillah. Who's the maf'ulun bihi of the verb ittaqillah? Allah. Right. We can see it's in nasb, based on what we learned in the previous weeks. Who is the fa'il of ittaqi? We said it's an amr, right? And the fa'il, or the fa'il of the amr is not the amir, not the one giving the amr, but the one that should carry it out. And what does that refer to here? If it's normal amr, it's the second person, you. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is just in general saying, ittaqillah, have taqwa of Allah. Have taqwa of Allah. And we know taqwa is a loaded word. Fear Allah, be conscious of Allah, be in awe of Allah, be cognizant of Allah. How does that poem go? اللهم صل على سيدنا. لا تحقرن صغيرة إن الجبال من الحصى جوزها. I'm just forgetting the first line of this piece of poetry. وصنعك ماش فوق أرض شكر. خلي الذنوب صغيرها وكبيرها ذاك التقى. When explaining what taqwa is, one poet says, leave all sins. خلي الذنوب صغيرها وكبيرها, the small ones and the big ones. خلي الذنوب صغيرها وكبيرها ذاك التقى. واصنع كماش فوق أرض الشوك يحذر ما يرى. Be like a person walking on a land filled with thorns. He's wary of where he steps. Or he's wary of whatever he sees. لا تحقرن صغيرة. Do not belittle even a small bad deed. إن الجبال من الحصى. Because mountains are indeed made up of pebbles. So that mindset is what is referred to by taqwa. Being highly conscious and acutely conscious of things, of the existence of Allah. So ittaqillah. Where, when, how? حيثما كنت. حيثما. حيث means where. حيثما means wherever. Ma tankiriya. Right? Haythuma, wherever. That's when you want to make something more indefinite, wherever. Ittaqillaha haythuma. Be conscious of Allah. Fear Allah haythuma, wherever kunta. Kunta, kana means he was. Kunta, you were. So yeah, because of the ittaqi being a condition, you'll say, fear Allah wherever you are. Be conscious of Allah wherever you are. Doesn't matter. So that's the first part of the advice. Second part of the advice. وَأَتْبِعْ وَأَتْبِعْ. So what's the root letters of this verb? Tabi'a. What do you know from that? To follow. Now this one is on the fourth bar. The fourth bar. You guys said you've done the second scale. When you say second scale, what do you mean by that? Which one? Fa'ala. That one. Fa'ala. Right, okay. So this is the fourth one. But the meaning is similar to that of the second scale. Or it has a similar connotation. It means to make something do that thing. So tabi'a means to follow. Atba'a will mean to make something follow. Tabi'a means to follow. Atba'a will mean to make something follow. So it makes it transitive. So wa'atbi' and cause to follow or make follow. As-sayyi'ata. So again, this verb is an amr, fi'al al-amr. Who is the fa'il again? You. What's the maf'ulun bihi? As-sayyi'ata. Make follow as-sayyi'a. As-sayyi'a is a bad deed. From su, evil. As-sayyi'a, make follow an evil deed. What should you make follow an evil deed? What's the second maf'ul? The second maf'ul is al-hasanata. So this one has two maf'uls here. وَأَتْبِعِ السَّيِّئَةَ الْحَسَنَةَ. Make follow a bad deed. What must you make follow a bad deed? A good deed. So make a good deed follow a bad deed. When we read through a sukoon, like I don't want to say وَأَتْبِعْ السَّيِّئَةَ الْحَسَنَةَ. How will I read it? What I will replace the sukoon of atbi' with? For flow. With the kasra, right? وَأَتْبِعِ السَّيِّئَةَ الْحَسَنَةَ. And make a good deed follow a bad deed. تَمْحُهَا. The verb is maha yamhu. On the first verb, mim ha waw, maha yamhu, and it means to efface something, to wipe something out. To wipe something out. Maha yamhu, to wipe something out. So the talab is, or there's a request, make a good deed follow a bad deed. What will happen as a result of that? The verb is maha yamhu. It should be tamhu. But because this is a response to a condition, we just say tamhu. The details of that we will learn in due time, right? But it's a jawab, it's a response to a request. So what will happen? Make a good deed follow a bad deed. Tamhuha, it will wipe it out. It, you can see the verb tamhu is feminine. It, that hasana, will wipe. What will it wipe? Ha, it, referring to the sayyid. Make the good deed follow a bad deed. That good deed will wipe out the bad deed. Subhanallah. I mean, okay, we'll discuss it afterwards. The last part of the advice, there's three advices here. The last part of it is وَخَالِقْ. وَخَالِقْ. What does that mean here? This is also an amr. Now, this is the amr of the third verb form. This is not the word like, you know, khalaqa means to create, right? And then ay khaliqun will be what? One who creates, a creator, right? But now, this is not that. This is from the verb form khalaqa. The third form has the connotation of mutuality. What other words do you know from, well, that root is kha, lam, qaf? khuluq. You know khalq, creation, but you also know the word khuluq. Okay. You know the word khuluq. What does khuluq mean? Khalq means creation. Khuluq will mean your character. You can say almost like your khalq is your external self and your khuluq is your internal self. Right? So this word khalaqa means to interact with people, to show conduct with people, to display character with people, with each other. So it says وَخَالِقِ النَّاسَ, and interact with people. Interact with the people. Al-nasa is the maf'ul bihi. Conduct yourself with people بِخُلُقٍ حَسَنٍ. Be with خُلُقٍ حَسَنٍ. What kind of construction is that? The be khuluqin, that's a harful jar ismul majrur, right? And the khuluqin hasanin, mawsuf and sifa, right? And what does it mean? With a beautiful conduct, with excellent conduct. Fear Allah wherever you are. Follow, make a good deed, follow a bad deed. The good deed will wipe out the bad deed. And interact with people with beautiful conduct. You know, there's so many commentaries on this hadith, of the hadith being shamil. You know, if you just had this, it would be enough for you. If you just followed this, it would be enough for you. It's like it has in it a summary of deen, because it speaks about, you know, your internal state. It speaks about your, you know, what happens when you make mistakes. And it also speaks about how you interact with people. And obviously, if you have taqwa of Allah, then you'll fulfill all the rights of Allah, do all your ibadat and all of those things. And if you have, you know, if you have good conduct with people, then your interactions with people will all be good and sound. And that's really the two main branches of deen: your relationship with Allah and your relationship with people via your relationship with Allah. And by extension, everything in creation. Right. Some things we can comment on this, but I think what we'll do now is we'll take a pause here. I don't want to be interfering with it. We'll take our break. We'll come back. We'll just mention 1 or 2 points on this, and then we'll continue with our nahwu. For now, jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So you can go for your break. You can exit. You can exit. Yeah, but just do it quietly, please. Assalamu alaikum.